Imagine opening your Etsy dashboard to see that your shop has been suspended. Sadly, this is something that actually happens quite a lot, especially when you're first starting out on Etsy. But don't worry, I'm here to help you. Through years of experience myself and lots of discussions with some seasoned Etsy sellers, I've pinpointed the top 8 things you can do to avoid getting suspended on Etsy. These tips won't guarantee that you won't be suspended, but they'll greatly reduce the chances. And if you are currently suspended by Etsy, hopefully these reasons will give you some insight and food for thought around why that may be. Although it may seem like it sometimes, Etsy isn't suspending accounts just for the fun of it. They just want to make sure that all of the sellers on the platform are real, trustworthy, and follow their rules. And they have different processes in place to check that. The tricky part is that Etsy doesn't always tell us why they suspend a shop, which makes it difficult for us to fix the problem. But we're going to go over those top reasons today. And at the end of this video, I'll not only share what I think is the biggest reason why shops get suspended, I'll also share some tips around how you can get your shop back after suspension. When you first start your Etsy shop, one of the first things that Etsy will get you to do is to create a listing. Now, what I've seen many others recommend is to just use that to create a so-called throwaway or placeholder listing. The idea being that you just fill in some random information and publish it with no intention of selling it. Basically a placeholder that then gets deleted as soon as you've actually created your account. But think of this from Etsy's perspective. Someone creates an account, creates some very basic, shady looking listing, and then that gets deleted several minutes later, after which then loads of other listings come flooding in. It could ring alarm bells that you could be a bot, and that's one of the reasons why Etsy may flag your account and suspend you temporarily. Instead, I would recommend that you spend a little bit more time on this throwaway or temporary placeholder listing. You want it to look real, right? So you want to add a simple but somewhat believable title, a simple, easy description, fill in all of the other required information, as well as upload some actual real photos as well. And then publish it and let it sit. Don't touch that listing for a while, maybe 1 to 2 weeks. And on top of that, don't add any new listings for at least a couple of days. Just let that one listing settle in on your account a little bit. You're essentially warming Etsy up to you a little bit, letting them get used to you. So tip 1 is to not throw away your throwaway listing. Related to this, you don't want to upload too many listings at once. This especially goes for in the beginning of your Etsy journey, but is also quite important if you're a little more experienced. Again, Etsy's always on the lookout for bots, and if you're giving them any kind of possibility that you may be one, it could raise red flags. And if the first thing you do after creating your account is upload or import 30, 40, 50 listings, it could look a little dodgy. So again, I would in the beginning go a little easy on Etsy. After you've created that first listing, let the dust settle a little bit. And then after that, start to gradually add listings. I would suggest 1 to 2 listings per day. No more than that, especially in the beginning stages. Again, you're trying to avoid alarm bells going off at Etsy headquarters. In the meantime, you can go about setting up all sorts of other important information around your store, such as branding elements like your logo, your banner, your announcements, your About Me section, as well as some of the legalities such as your store policies. Next, you want to make sure that your region is accurate. Another thing you'll be asked to do during the setup process is to basically pick your location or your region, where you're based. And you need to make sure that that accurately reflects where you actually live. I know a lot of people, including myself, that plan or already do sell to other countries other than their own. And that's absolutely fine. You can still continue to do that, but you still need to set your location to where you are, not to where you're planning on selling. And don't think that you can outsmart the Etsy system here. They actually track IP addresses as well. So for example, if you set your location to the US, but you're actually based in Spain, as soon as they see that someone from a Spanish IP address has logged into that account, it's gonna ring alarm bells at Etsy. Similar to this, you'll also be asked to enter some bank details. This is essentially where all of the revenue from Etsy will be sent to, and also where any Etsy costs get taken off of. Again, you need to make sure that that bank account is in the same region as where you are based. And even another step further, you need to make sure that all of the billing details that you enter into that Etsy form are identical to the details that you have on file at that bank account. Etsy does banking checks, and if they see any kind of inconsistencies between the bank details, they don't like that. So for example, if you live in Spain, set your region as Spain, and then make sure that you're adding a Spanish bank account. And make sure that those billing details that you enter for that bank are identical to the ones that you have on file at your bank. By the way, folks, as we're going through this, if there's any other different reasons or tips for account suspension that maybe you've come across, I would love to hear them. Other people probably would as well, so please feel free to drop them down in the comments below. And if you feel like you're learning something so far, I would love it if you click on the little thumbs up below. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe for weekly Etsy videos. Tip number 5 is to not buy your own products. I know it can be tough to get sales in the beginning, and I'm sure you're eager to grow your store. Something I'm sure you maybe have considered is to just go ahead and buy one of your own products and maybe post that first positive review as well. But as tempting as it is, I wouldn't do it. As mentioned before, Etsy tracks IP addresses, and more often than not, if Etsy sees that someone from that same IP address is buying from that store, it raises red flags. It makes it seem like you could be a bot. But if you do want to go down this route, what I would suggest instead as an alternative is to ask a friend or a family member to buy something from your store instead. Just make sure they're ideally not in the same household as you, so the IP address will be different. The nice thing about this alternative is that it also gives you the first opportunity to actually get some feedback on your products. You also need to avoid having an overdue Etsy balance. There may be times when you owe Etsy a little bit of cash, especially in the beginning stages where you maybe haven't had any sales yet, but you've spent a little bit of money on getting things off the ground. For example, Etsy charges 20 cents per listing that you publish. And you may be investing in other things. For example, maybe you're experimenting with Etsy ads, which of course cost a little bit. But Etsy doesn't like it if you owe them money and don't pay it for a while. They've actually come out and clearly said that if you have an overdue bill, they will temporarily suspend your account. And when a bill is overdue, you typically only have a few days to actually get that paid off before they'll suspend your account temporarily. So I'd recommend 2 things to overcome this. Firstly is to set up auto billing with a credit card of yours. That way, any fees or any dues are automatically pulled off of that card without you going into an overdue status. And secondly, I would also on a regular basis just go and check your payment account on Etsy just to make sure that you're not in the red and that everything is running smoothly. And just like any other big marketplace out there, you're restricted from selling certain products in certain categories. And you need to make sure that you're staying away from those prohibited items. The great news is that Etsy actually makes it crystal clear in their handbook what classifies as a prohibited item. So for example, we've got alcohol, tobacco, drugs, animal products, dangerous items, hate items, illegal items, nudity, mature content, violent items. I do think there is an element of common sense here as well, but you do need to be aware of this. I will add a link to this specific site in the description below. This page on the Etsy website actually goes into quite a lot of detail around what is prohibited and what isn't prohibited. I thought it was very useful. Hopefully you can find some use in it as well. And lastly, I want to talk about trademark infringements. In my opinion, this is the biggest reason why shops get suspended. A trademark infringement happens when someone uses a symbol, logo, or saying that is trademarked. And it happens a lot on Etsy. I think one of the biggest problems is that, you might be scrolling through Etsy and bump into a Disney t-shirt, for example, with thousands of sales, and you start thinking to yourself, ooh, well, if they can do it, it must be okay, right? But no, it's not. Unless they have some special permission from Disney to use their trademark, which is unlikely, they're breaking the law. And they quite frankly just haven't been caught yet. If you were driving down a highway and see a bunch of cars drive past you way over the speed limit, do you then think to yourself, ooh, well, it must be okay then? And if a policeman stops you, how much are they going to care if your reasoning is, well, I saw others doing it? Probably not very much, right? Another thing that makes this quite tricky is that really super random things are trademarked. I myself have actually fallen into this trap. I actually had some listings taken down because I was using something which I had no idea was trademarked. I would never have guessed. So my advice around this would be, whenever you're creating a design, is to always double check on the online trademark database. USPTO has an absolutely fantastic website which you can use to check for trademarks of any kind to see what's allowed and basically what's not, because it's trademarked. Okay, so we've got 8 different things or reasons there, but what happens if you've already been suspended? What do you do now? Well, as you'll see in your Etsy shop, there'll be a little banner at the top which allows you to contact Etsy or to essentially file an appeal. This is an opportunity for you to essentially appeal the decision to suspend your shop. Now, something really, really important around this is that you have one chance and one chance only to appeal. So you need to make the most of it. So I'm not going to give you some cookie cutter message for you to send them because I think every situation is different, but a couple of tips that I need you to take into consideration. Always be polite and friendly. Don't be passive aggressive in any way. It's not going to go down well. Try to be as descriptive as possible about your shop and about yourself as a human being as well. Show them that you're not a bot. And very importantly as well is to actually reflect on if you think you have been suspended for a valid reason. And if that is the case, letting Etsy know what you're going to do to help fix that. So there we have it, folks. Take these ideas away with you and think about them critically as you're either first building your store or trying to grow your store. And I've got my fingers crossed for you that your store will not be suspended. Again, if you haven't already, feel free to like this video and also subscribe. Would love to see you in the next video.